Now let's take a look at ways to be organized in SketchUp. The first method is to simply group objects or components. So here I have two appliances. I have a dishwasher and a refrigerator. And now these are basically just raw geometry. They haven't been organized in any way. So if I were to say click on any portion of this refrigerator, I would just get the component that I click on. So if I wanted to say move this refrigerator, I would have to do something like a box select and then hit my move key in order to move this. Now, this is going to be very tricky. Let's say this refrigerator was in a kitchen with cabinets all around it. It might not be easy to box select this whole refrigerator. So this is why we have things such as grouping. Now, grouping allows you to just take a number of objects and condense it down into a group that you can easily select. So let's just do that. I'm going to go ahead and again box select that refrigerator. Right-click, make group. And notice how it creates this bounding box around the refrigerator. And if I were to click off of it and then just touch the refrigerator again, you can see that it highlights as a single group. Now I can take my move tool and move that wherever I want. And now it's very easy to select. Now let's say I wanted to remodel this or change something within that group. Well, all we have to do is double click on that, and notice how we get this kind of dotted line bounding box around the refrigerator. And then that allows me to select whatever is inside of that group. So if I wanted to say move the handle or something, I could do that. Once I click off, I have to click on again and then double click to get back into that. So clicking off closes the group. Now, if I want to completely ungroup it, I can right click over it and hit explode. And that just removes the group and puts it back to where it was. So I'm actually just going to box select this and just hit delete. And let's move on to this dishwasher. So I'm going to focus in on this dishwasher. And if you notice, it basically has three main parts. We have the body of the dishwasher, we have the door, and the handle. Now, we can group this all as one, but let's go ahead and group it individually and then group the groups. So we will have what's normally known as a hierarchy of groups. So not only can we group components, we can also group groups. So we can have nested groups. So I'm just going to select the side of this dishwasher body, and then I want to select everything. So the easiest way to do that is to right-click, go down to select, and let's just select all connected. And what that does is it basically just selects anything that's connected to that, and that will be the entire body of that dishwasher. So I can right-click over that and hit Make Group. So now I have a group for just the body of the dishwasher. Well, let's do that again for this door. I'm going to go ahead and just click on one of the faces, right-click, select, all connected. And then right-click again, make group. And then we can do it again for the handle. This time I'm just going to box select that, right-click, make group. So now I have three groups. I have the body, the door, and the handle. Well, we can go a little bit deeper and organize this a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and select this handle, go into my move tool, and then right-click at the corner of that group. And then just move it along the green axis until it snaps to the front of that door. So now I've got this basically in the right place. I can select this and this. So I'm just shift selecting both of these. Right click, make group. So now I have a group for the door and the handle. Well, let's go ahead and continue doing this. And I think you know what's next. We're going to go ahead and snap this door to the front of the dishwasher. Select everything. I'm just box selecting it all. And again, make group. So now I have groups of groups. So I have this whole thing which is the dishwasher, but I also can double click inside of this and select the door. And let's say we wanted to open the door. Well, I can just go over to my rotate tool, select that endpoint, rotate along the X or the red axis, and I can open the door of that dishwasher. So there we go. So grouping is a great way to keep your geometry as well as your scene organized. Components are another way to organize your scene. They're very similar to groups, but they have a couple of key differences which will make your life a lot easier. So here I have a chair, and I've already grouped parts of the chair to make it easier to work with. Now, if we want to make a component, it's almost exactly like making a group. So I'm just going to box select everything in the chair and then right click. And instead of make group, I'm going to select make component. And what that does is it brings up this create component window. Now, if I hit this down arrow, you'll see that this actually has a lot more, but we're just going to focus mostly on the name of it. We're going to call it chair. And we can give it a description, and then there's a lot of other options which I'll get to later. And all we need to do is hit create. Now, it basically draws the bounding box around it, very similar to what we have with a group. I can click anywhere on this and I get that bounding box. If I hit my move tool, I can move it wherever I want. And just like with a group, if I double click on it, I get the dotted line box and I can go in and work with the individual objects or groups within that component. Now let me show you one of the big differences between components and groups. Now components can link multiple objects together. So let's just go ahead and make a quick copy here. So I'm just going to go into my move tool, and then I'm going to hit the control or command key and get the plus sign. And this will allow me to copy this. So I'm just going to copy it over and hit enter. And now I have two components. Now these two are linked. So I'm going to go to my original. I'm going to double click on this, open it up, select that back cushion. Now notice how it's also selecting in that other component. Let's go to my scale tool. And I'm just going to select the one here in the middle and just make that a little bit taller and watch what happens. When I resize this, any component with that same name is going to resize as well. So I can take one object and make it the reference for any number of objects in the scene. So if I were to, for example, again, go into my move tool and hit control or command and make another copy, or we could do, say, for example, times 2 or times 3. Now I've got a bunch of these, but if I go into my original, again, anything I do can change on all of those. And so that's a really handy way to work with components. And so you can make, for example, a standard chair. And then if you need to change it, you don't have to go and change every single chair in the scene. So components are a really great way to create standardized objects that you can use over and over in SketchUp. Now let's take a look at some additional features of components. So here I have a little backyard shed, and let's go ahead and create a window. In fact, we're going to use components to create a standardized window that we can place anywhere. So in order to create a window, we have to draw it. I'm going to start with a rectangle. I'm going to create a long skinny rectangle on this face of my shed. And then I'm going to go to my offset tool, highlight this face, and let's go ahead and offset or inset a little bit of that. Select this face here, and we're going to use push-pull to pull out a little window frame here, maybe about 1 inch or 2. And then I'm going to select that window, and I'm just going to hit delete because I want to be able to see through it. Now this is just a window on this particular object here, but let's go ahead and create a standard component that creates this effect. So I need to select this geometry, but I don't want to select anything else. So I'm going to keep my box select pretty close here, and then I'm going to orbit around just to make sure that I haven't selected anything I don't want. So now that I have just the window selected, right click, make component. And I'm just going to call this window. Now I'm going to go to my options here, and this is really important. So first off, do we want to glue this to any type of surface? Well, it's a window. It's always going to be on a wall, so we want to glue it to a vertical surface. And then do we want it to cut an opening? Well, we actually deleted a face to create an opening, so yes. And then we also have options such as always face camera or shadows face sun, and I don't need any of those. So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure it's on vertical, cut opening, and let's hit create. So now I have that as a component. So if I were to select this, I'm selecting it just like a group, and then I can move it wherever I want, and it always cuts that hole. Now, if I were to duplicate this, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control or Command. I now have a second component, and I can move that, and now I have two windows. And so now I have a standard component that I can use in my scene that will always cut that window. So you can see that components actually have a little bit more power than just being able to copy objects and keep them related. You can also do things such as cut holes. You can snap them to surfaces and do a couple of other things. So they're really, really nice features for you to use in SketchUp. Another way to organize your scenes is with tags. These allow you to tag objects and then hide or show them by tag. So it's a way to kind of organize your scenes by type. Now tags work with basically two windows. Now we have a tags window here, and this particular scene does not have any tags. So let's create some tags that we can assign to the objects in the scene. So I'm going to hit the plus sign here and just create a tag. I'm going to create a tag for, let's say, the house, and then that shows up here. And then let's create one, say, for the fence in front of the house. And then maybe another one for the pavers. And then maybe one more for the landscape. So now I have 4 tags, and I can assign those to objects in the scene. Now there's 2 places where you can assign them. You can assign them in the tags menu. You can also assign them in the entity info window. So I'm going to left click and select the house, go to entity info, and you'll see we have some information here about the house. And then here we have a tag. So I can just click on this and select the house tag, and now that house is tagged with that particular tag. If I wanted to, I could select the fence, and notice how things change in this entity info window. And again, I can tag that as fence. I could shift select a couple of these pavers and tag them. Now you can also tag within the tags menu. So if I go back into the tag panel, you see that I can work with the tag. So if I wanted to, I could hide or show, say, the fence or the house. I can also color by tags. Now notice how each tag has a color. So if I click on this, it will actually color the scene by tag, which is an easy way to see the scene. Now one of the things is that we actually don't have tags for these pavers. So if I want to, I can actually click on this and then click on pavers, and then just hover over and select those ones that I want. So if I color by tags, you can see it a little bit easier. So I can apply those to the pavers. So now I'm tagging the pavers. We can do the same. I'm going to highlight the landscape and then just tag that. and you can see how the color changes, and that's the color of the landscape. So if I want to, say, get these planters as well, I can do that. Now I can toggle that on or off by color by tags. And so this really allows me to hide and show objects just by their tags. So as you can see, it's a very nice way to organize your scene and as well as visualize it. The Entity Info window is another way to control how your scene works. So we touched on this a little bit with tags, but let's go ahead and go a little bit deeper into it. So I'm going to select this house and then go over to Entity Info. Now, Entity Info is pretty straightforward. Basically, it gives you the object name, what materials are on it. So if I left click on this, you'll see that actually this has quite a few materials on it. And as well as a tag, which we worked with. Now, other things that you can use are cast and receive shadows. So if I turn off cast shadows, then it will have absolutely no shadows. But if I turn off receive shadows, notice how it just doesn't self-shadow, but this shadow here along the ground is actually working because that's a separate object, but it's not going to shadow itself. And then we can also lock and unlock objects. So if I wanted to, I could lock this, and now it highlights in red. So if I select this, I can select it, but I can't do anything else. If I went over to my Move tool, I can't move it or rotate it or scale it. So I really can't manipulate that object. It's fixed in place. And that can be handy if you have objects that you really don't want to move. You can always just lock them to keep them in place. And I'm going to go ahead and unlock this. Now, Entity Info is a great way to find out additional information about your object in your scene. For those people who have access to SketchUp Go, you also have another really valuable organization tool, and that's called the Outliner. Now, this is not available to those with SketchUp Free. Now, SketchUp Go users can use the Outliner, and that's located here. And what this does is it gives you a very nice overview of your scene. Now, this is a scene where I've already organized part of it. So I have this refrigerator here, and you can see that in here, in the Outliner, I have that refrigerator, and if I double click on it, you'll see that I've actually created some subgroups here. So I can look at those subgroups just by hitting this arrow, and that opens up my hierarchy. So I have my door assembly, which also has a handle and the door itself. I have one for the left and the right, as well as a drawer assembly as well. So this is a really great way to visualize the hierarchy of your scene and be able to work with it. Now, in addition to this, you also have hide and show. So if I want to, I can go into my Outliner, hide and show the refrigerator or just parts of it. If I don't want to see that door, I can hide it. I can also use this window to create hierarchies myself. Now, if I wanted to, I could select these and just group them, but I could do that here in the Outliner as well. So if I wanted to take that handle and connect it to the door, I can just left click and drag over the door and watch what happens. That door now has the handle as a subcomponent, or basically as a child. So I can take that dishwasher door, drag it to the body, and now when I select the body, I select everything, but I can also go to the door or just go down to the handle. So it's a very easy way to organize your scenes. Now, you can normally do this through grouping or making components, but sometimes I find this is easier. Now, some additional tools that you have in the Outliner is you have these little dots on the right-hand side of every object, and that just gives you those same options you would have if you were to right-click on them. We can also expand or collapse everything in the scene. We can also reveal are selected, which basically just zooms into the thing that we have in the scene. If you can't find it in a complex scene, that's a great way to kind of locate stuff. We can get rid of things, we can delete them. And then we also have what's called a components window. So if I go into components, it shows all the components in the scene. So when you make a component, they will show up here. And so then you can just left click and drag from here to create components in your scene. So if you have SketchUp Go, the outliner is a very handy way to organize and visualize what is in your scene.